Welcome back to another Innovation Review. Today we're going to take a look back and talk about the things that we loved on the Gotrax Traveler. First, let's start out with the things I don't love about this bike. And the first one is going to be this battery. Now, when we compare this to other e-bike batteries that are this similar design, there's nothing that stands out to me as being particularly bad. I think the battery functions well. The only thing that I would say is the frame that they've used. We've got some of this integrated cabling, we've got some cool colors, and then we have this sort of middle of the pack e-bike battery thrown on here. And I feel like if they were able to design something that looked a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, I feel like we could get something that was maybe a little bit smaller, something that had a lower profile, possibly bringing a little bit of that center of gravity down a little bit further. But like I mentioned, that is mainly from an aesthetic standpoint. The battery functioned well. I feel like we were able to get the range that this battery is supposed to get. So from a usability standpoint, not really too many issues. We've got this USB port here on the side, which is an excellent feature to have. We've got a charging port here, lockable, removable battery. You know, it really is middle of the road. We've got a quick readout here on the top as well. So just if they could find something that looked a little bit better, kind of fit the whole vibe of the bike a little bit more, I feel like that would really elevate the bike as a whole. The next part of the bike that I'm not a huge fan of is the display, or really the lack thereof a display. We have all these e-bikes coming out. They've either got grayscale or color LCD screens, and this one is just a button screen. It shows us a few things, right? It's going to show us the amount of juice that we have in our battery, but even then it's only set up into 4 segments, so it's not really giving us a whole lot of information there. We also have 3 modes, low, medium, and high, whereas most e-bikes these days come with at least 5. And when you have those screens and you have those computers, you're able to get in there and change some things on the controller. Maybe you want 9 levels of pedal assist. Maybe you do want 3 levels of pedal assist. And with those other displays, some of those newer displays, it really gives you a little bit of that functionality that we don't really have with this display. One of the things that was nice is on here, because we've got this integrated front light, we have got a light button right here on the top. Now we have seen some that will have the walk mode, like the 6-kilometer button right there instead of the light. So it was cool that because we have that integrated light, we have got a button here specifically for the light. Again, this is one of those things that's a little bit more of a would be nice to have kind of upgrade. The technology here is a little bit rudimentary when we compare it to some of the other stuff that's coming out. And so if I'm spending, $1,000-ish on an e-bike, I would really like to have that information displayed in a way that's a little bit more detailed than this. The other thing that I'm not a huge fan of is the lack of nighttime safety features that we have on this bike. Now, this is something that isn't necessarily designed to be ridden at night. So I don't think that's a recommendation from the company, like, hey, go ride this out at night. In fact, they may even state the opposite. So me as an e-bike owner, I don't want to be tied to going out in the day or going out, it's like, oh, I got to go faster because it's almost sundown and I'll die. So with this bike, we have got a few things that are lacking that we like to see. We do have the front headlight, so that's a plus. We also have some reflectors here on the wheels, which is nice, but we don't have any extra puncture protection or a sidewall reflective stripe on the tires, which is something I would like to see as an upgrade. We also don't have the integrated brake light that would be awesome as well. So we have all this integrated cabling, and I feel like there's still some good spots to integrate a tail light into the battery, something that would just turn on when the lights turn on. That would be an excellent feature to have. We just don't have those sort of things. We do have a reflector back there, which is nice, but it would be nice to just kind of take that a step further and have a couple other safety features if I wanted to ride this bike at night. The last thing that I'm not a huge fan of on this bike is the Shimano SIS Index derailleur. As you guys know, I am a fan of the actual shifters themselves. I feel like they're super simple to use and very intuitive. Now, normally with those SIS Index shifters, we see those paired with either a Altus or a turning derailleur on a lot of the bikes that we review, and that really hasn't been a problem. And again, sort of from a functionality standpoint, I feel like the SIS Index shifter does what it needs to do. It derails. It derailleurs things. And so it's not necessarily like this didn't work. It's just it seemed like the build on this, when we compare it to either the Tourney or the Altus, was just a little bit on the cheaper side. So it One of the things that I noticed about it was a little bit louder. Every single time that it was passing one of those links across the sprockets here in the back, you can hear it, which you don't necessarily get from the Tourneys or any of the higher end Shimanos. And so that was something that I noticed right off the bat, was it was a little bit louder and just kind of came across as being a little bit cheaper than some of the other Shimanos that we have reviewed. So from a functionality standpoint, it does work. It does do the job of railing and derailing, as I'd mentioned, but it just comes across as being a little bit of a cheaper component and probably something that Gotrax could upgrade in future models of the bike. Now that we talked about the things that I don't like about this bike, let's talk about the things that I do like. And we'll start right here on the down tube with the lack of cables that you can see. We have got integrated cabling over here on the down tube. We have got integrated cabling right here. We've got integrated cable down here. And it really makes the whole bike feel very sleek in its design. One of the reasons why it contrasted the battery, as we talked about in the beginning, was the fact that this bike looks cool. The frame geometry looks cool. The fact that we've got all this integrated cabling is nice. So my first pro is about the integrated cables and the way they were able to work it into the frame in these different areas just to give the bike overall a really cool, sleek kind of vibe to it. One of the other features that I love about the Traveler, and you've heard me mention it in some of the recent reviews we have done, is the fact that they integrated a thumb throttle here instead of having a twist throttle. In my opinion, this is going to give us a better grip because we do get to use an entire grip on this side. You know, some of those twist throttles will have the little half grip. Sometimes we run into integration issues there. So the fact that they decided to go with this thumb throttle, even though this is one of the, generally cheaper thumb throttles, it functions well. It's nice and spring loaded, so it really did the job we needed to do. Plus, it allows me to have this full grip on this side, a better grip overall, and I just liked it better than the twist throttle. So it's cool to be complaining about twist throttles, and all of a sudden I get this bike and it's like, hey, here's a thumb throttle. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. It really is making my point for me about thumb throttles versus twist throttles. The other pro, in my opinion, is all of the small attention to details in a couple of little ways that really elevate the bike as a whole. Now, there are some companies and brands that do one thing, they'll do this other thing, but I feel like they really knocked off 3 or 4 things here. And I'm kind of categorizing them all together as like small steps towards the right direction, but I feel like when you combine all of those, it just elevates the bike a little bit more. So a few of the things that I liked that were attention to detail things, in my opinion, were the fact that we have really good cable management here up front. Now, it is a little bit on the stiffer size, and I have seen some that maybe look a little bit better, but the fact that they went through the trouble of getting us all this integration keeps everything nice and compact, and I think that's a big plus. On top, we have got this headset rubber cap that goes in the butt. Now, there are a lot of bike manufacturers that don't provide that, or maybe they do and it gets lost somewhere, or you see this little black thing and you're like, I don't know what to do with this, and it just stays in the box with the user manual. But if you do run into it, that's what that is for. You can throw that on the headset and just makes it look a little bit slicker. The other nice little attention to detail is going to be the fact that even though we are supplied with this lower end Shimano derailleur, we do have this derailleur guard, which is excellent. Now, a derailleur guard, for those of you who do not know, is something that just sticks outside of the derailleur, and that is going to keep the derailleur safe from hitting sticks, stones, walls, curbs, things like that. One of the other small little attention to detail things that come along with utilizing this frame is the fact that the way that the brake calipers are mounted back here, it really makes it easy to adjust. And if you wanted to get larger or smaller disc brakes on here, it's one of those things that just makes it a lot easier to access and change out those parts. And the last pro, in my opinion, is going to be the bike overall. I know that sounds kind of like a cop-out on putting together a pro and con list, but when I was looking at it, the things that really stood out to me were the overall bike and the overall performance, especially when I compare it with other bikes that are similar to this, kind of that mountain bike style with the thin wheels. Now, we do tend to get a lot of those fat tire bikes. I know you guys love them, so we just keep getting them, but it was cool to compare this with some other bikes that are very similar that we've reviewed in the past. And the overall riding experience I found was just a little bit more enjoyable. There was a few things that I mentioned in the con section that I think they could fix to really bring this bike, into the next level. One of those things, in my opinion, would be to add in some better front forks here. Now, we don't have any sort of like quick adjustments, and like I'd mentioned in the review, they were a little bit squishy for my taste, or should I say for my weight, which I guess is also kind of for my taste. Wow, that phrase has no meaning for me now. But I feel like Gotrax is really on the right path with this bike, and with a few little upgrades. We talked about the forks, we talked about the screen, the battery. If you just replace those things, and the derailleur, you know, also the derailleur, but if you replace those things on this bike becomes a different monster. You know, if you've got a nicer battery, you've got a nicer front fork, we've got the display, and a better derailleur, the rest of this system really functions really well. So maybe that is still a little bit of a cop-out on the pros and cons list, but the overall experience is something that I personally viewed as a pro. So I'm not sure what the best way to convey that was, except for add it to the pro and con list. So the last pro is going to be the overall riding experience, and the overall bike in general is a big pro. All right, guys, that is going to do it for our long-term review of the Traveler from Gotrax. If you guys have any specific questions about things that I didn't cover in either the in-depth review or the long-term review, please let me know down in the comments. I love talking to you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. But it was something that I felt like needed to be conveyed, something you can't really quantitate. Quantitize me, Captain? Quantitize? I don't know.